I told myself, like, there's this season for everything. Maybe this season of life that I'm in right now, like, your dad just died. Like, it's only been a year. Like, you probably couldn't handle if there was something big happening right now. Like, let yourself just have this season of figuring it out, of grieving, of it not being as busy as you want. But then when I think about it, if I take, like, take a step back, I'm like, wait, you've been doing this for 10 years. There's two ways you could think about that. Either you haven't accomplished everything that you wanted, or you're not as big, or wow, you have done so much. Like, when you're in it, you sometimes don't understand how big that is.
Today I'm talking with Rana Campbell, the creator behind Dreams and Drive, a podcast geared toward creatives and lifestyle entrepreneurs who want to learn how to take their dreams out of park and into drive. Rana is someone who understands the power of community and what it means to build something meaningful while raising a family, navigating loss, and staying deeply curious about the world. This conversation is about identity, intuition, and the seasons of a creative life. It's about the stories we inherit, the stories we choose, and the ones we're still learning how to tell. And it's also about how Reina brings people together through questions, through connection, and through a belief in possibility that runs all the way back to her childhood. Rana Campbell, thank you so much for joining me on I'm Here Too.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you, and I want to jump into where it all started when I met you, which is your podcast, Dreams and Drive. And you've been hosting this podcast since 2016. You're now well past the 400 mark, which is a milestone in and of itself. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm really curious, if we can go back to the beginning, and can you just tell us a little bit about why you started the podcast, what it's about, and how it's changed over the years?
So I think it really goes back to, like, me being a little kid, where I was always interested in stories, creating things. I liked putting things together, and I just had a natural knack for, like, language arts and writing, and I was into poetry and the arts as a kid. And so I had a internship in college at CBS for 4 summers, and I thought I would go into media post college. That didn't happen. I ended up being in the nonprofit world, and then worked in the e-commerce marketing world. But I always still kind of wanted to be in the media world, so I had experimented in just pitching myself to be an online writer. I say that in terms. I was like a beauty writer for some online magazine brands catered to Black women, and I really fell in love with interviewing. I had this one editor at Madame Noir, Tanya Garcia, and she just kind of let me run wild. And I kind of started to develop this niche of, like, interviewing people about business. At the time, I had a blog at ranacampbell.com, and I had this series called Brand Makers, where I was interviewing people about how they built their brand. And this was all, like, I would interview them, and then I would do the transcription and then write out the interviews for the internet. And I had started seeing, like, people doing podcasts. I remember my first inspiration was Lewis Howes in School of Greatness. I loved his podcast. And I'll never forget, I was interviewing this guy for one of for my for the blog series Brand Makers, and he said to me, Raina, if you want to make start a podcast, what's stopping you? There's a lot of people out there who aren't as smart as you who are doing it. And it was like a light bulb in my head. It was August 2015, and I didn't know anything about podcasting. I just said, hey, by January 1st, 2016, I want to launch an episode. And so that kind of just catapulted me into podcasting. I spent the rest of the summer figuring it out. I had this, like, chance encounter that led to how I got the name Dreams and Drive. And so podcasting for me, I felt like was a natural continuation of just the story, right? Like, it going to the arts and falling in love with talking with people and storytelling, and then doing these written interviews, and then just kind of evolving into the spoken audio interviews and actually putting the audio out into the world. I think it was just a natural evolution of my dream driving journey.
And so it was pretty early days in terms of podcasting, right?
Yeah, 2016. Well,
Like
early, yeah.
early ish, middle,
Early.
what would you say?
I would say early days for the independent podcasters, because a lot of like you have those people who've been around, like were doing it in their garages and had these cult followings. But I feel like that was when Apple Podcasts was getting big. Like the podcast industry and the monetization of it was getting big around that time.
So, has any of that influenced how you think about dreams and drive, how you think about approaching people or the stories you want to tell? Like, what has that market influx done for your
I
show?
feel like in the beginning, if I can remember, it's so long ago. Like, so I'm approaching my 10-year anniversary in January. Um, I feel like it was just the hustler mentality of everybody was just trying to figure out this whole content creation thing. Whether you were a blogger, whether you were vlogging, I chose podcasting, and there was a big community of Black podcasters, especially independent podcasters, who we all were just trying things out at the same time. There was this girl called Barry of Podcast in Color, and she kind of curated all the Black podcasts and was leading, in my eyes, she was like leading this online podcast movement. Um, it was also like the time where like therapy for Black girls was big, and well, she's still big, Dr. Joy. But just like, we were all starting out together, and I felt like, how did it impact me? I just felt like I was curious too, and I was leveraging all the different ways of like, how do you build an audience? How do you build connections? Maybe that's probably the biggest thing. I think in the beginning, I was really leveraging my ability to build relationships and connections um, smartly. I was always like, maybe so. I was always online researching the industry. And then that led me to people that I should have on the show and led me to the types of questions I should ask. And it made me really be specific in finding my unique voice and how I conducted the show. And you've been on the show. So I feel like I started to get a reputation on how I did my interviews. And although now, like, I may not be like the biggest podcaster, but I do feel like I have a distinct voice and a distinct feeling that you'll feel whenever you leave the show. So it was really just being okay with figuring out what makes me different and what makes me stand out and honing in on that special factor of dreams and drive.
Well, you did mention that I was a guest, and I think I was episode 200 something. So you were
Yeah,
well
it's
into
funny
the
because I was listening to it, and that was when I think it was when my son, I heard him in the background. I was like, oh, that was Axel. So he must have been like a baby, and I was doing interviews with him on my lap or something.
He was totally a baby. But one of the things, I mean, you talk about, your distinctive style as a podcaster. And one of the things that I remember even today is it was one of the best interviews I had because you were warm. A lot of people can be warm, but you were also prepared. And I felt like you were really actually curious. So I'm curious, like, are those traits that you've learned or are you leveraging, or is a bit of both as you're continuing to develop?
That's a good question. I think I'm a natural curious person, and it's funny how I just received validation on that. So as you know, like my father passed away almost a year ago, and I was talking to an old friend of mine. We were just talking about dealing with like elderly parents. Well, my mom isn't. I wouldn't say like she's 66, so she's not that much. She's not that old yet, but still, like stepping now into like a caregiving role since my father's not here. My childhood friend, we're just talking about like things that happen with your parents. And she's like, well, you and your mom have always kind of been going at it since you were young. You've always been the one to ask questions. And she didn't like when you asked questions. And I forgot that. Like, I've always been that child. So as a kid, I was always curious. And my dad was the type of parent who would say, figure it out, right? My mom would be like, can you leave me alone and go figure it out? But my dad was always, he was an engineer, he was very hands-on. He made me realize that like you can always explore anything. And I think that's something that stood out to me. I was a big reader as a kid too. So I think as a reader, you're forced to get lost in the world of words and the world of pages. Like, you're uncovering story page by page. And I was always just wanting to know what's happening next, what's happening next. And so I think my natural curiosity And then just me reading up about what makes good interviewers and what makes you stand out. And what I like to hear, I like listening to conversations, and I wanted my podcast to sound like a conversation, to sound like a natural uncovering, to sound like, it's funny because growing up, I also listened to a lot of talk radio. My parents were huge WBAI fans. Like they always had that playing in the background, like talk radio all day long. So it was just something that it was just part of me. And I think me being part strategic and then me just being, it was just natural for me to wonder, like, but why? Or did you ever think about this? I also had a lot of, practice at Princeton doing my thesis. I did qualitative research, qualitative interviewing. So I think that also helped prepare me as well.
You mentioned Axel, your son, and you mentioned your father. And, one of the things that I've appreciated about your podcast through the years is that in addition to interviewing guests, you also let us in, as you said, like we also uncover what's going on with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
You do episodes that are focused on you. So big life moments, raw, honest life moments, right?
Yeah.
Becoming a parent, losing a parent, like that ongoing journey. And I'm wondering, was that always going to be part of the experience, or did life help inform what you needed to share with your community of dream drivers?
It's funny because in the beginning, I don't think I did. Like, I have to go back and see when I started doing more solo episodes. I think it after having my son, I just didn't have as much time. And then I realized maybe my interviewing wasn't going to be as consistent. So, what type of other content could I do that would help bring people in? I think, like early on, actually, I do remember because I talked about the car accident early on. I think I realized like people were interested in the evolution of me. And I had a lot of coaches. I think even now I haven't listened to them 100%. They always said you have to build your personal brand. People aren't listening to Dreams and Drive because it's Dreams and Drive. They're listening because you are in the driver's seat doing the interviews. And if there was another interviewer, it might not be the same. Well, it wouldn't be the same show. So I think I was very hesitant or leaning into that. I'm like, oh, I don't want to share, I don't want to do this. But I realized like people want to connect, and it was the biggest thing having a baby during the pandemic. What? Or even when I lost my job, or not even lost my job, when I quit my job and was doing the solo thing for a while. It was part of the dream driving journey. And I had a coach who told me, you need to be honest about where you are in your own journey, because that's kind of the whole it factor of the show, is being able to share that you're also doing this as well, or you're also trying to figure it out as well. So I think that was like the big impetus for me, was like to be real with my listeners. Of course, like there's always a big mix between like being private and then sharing personal things. Like there's a way to share your personal life where you still have privacy, right? But at the same time, it wouldn't be fair to not update people on what's going on, because I think like even becoming a mother informed so much of my whole world perspective. The lens by which I saw the world has changed. And so I think I needed to inform people about, wait, now I can ask people, when people talked about death and grief before, I wasn't able to connect. Like I've lost people, but they were distant relatives. Like my dad and my grandma were the first huge big losses in my life. Being a parent, you cannot understand what it's like to be a parent until you're actually in the shoes of raising a child. And there's so much about, like, even questions I asked in the past, I was so embarrassed. Or even I used to do interviews at 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock at night. And I'm like, why was I asking women with kids to do that at that time? But I just didn't know. So it definitely impacted the way I did the podcast.
Well, and it's so central, as you said, to like your actual what it's about, right? This idea of who's in the driver's seat and
Yeah, and
figuring
the
out like,
person's changing. Like it's been 10 years. There's no way. When I go back and listen to like my first episodes, I would hope that I have evolved as well.
right. Right. Well, I mean, so you've talked a lot about storytelling, and I want to know, because for folks listening to this, right, to your point about why are people listening and what are we trying to do here? Like, I too have struggled with how do you build in public? Like, how do you continue to think about yourself as an ongoing story? And, I think I'm on that spectrum of I'm probably a little bit more comfortable in some aspects, not all, but at least part of the story is being told. And I'm really sensitive, though, to the fact that not everyone feels comfortable doing that, like putting themselves out there, talking about a personal brand, like architecting one intentionally. But everybody's out there. We all, whether we like it or not, right? We have
Yeah.
reputations. We have ways people perceive and interact with us. So you did a blog, and I don't remember what year, but it was about your Myers-Briggs type. And
Oh,
my eyes,
yes. I
yeah,
was
I perked
obsessed
up.
with that for a while. I go through obsessions where I just go really deep on one subject, and I don't know why.
Well, that's one that you and I share. I remember in like seventh grade, I was like, "What's your Myers Briggs?" And my friends were like, "What are you talking about?"
Mhm.
But anyway, I'm curious. Like, what did you learn from that moment of being obsessed or preoccupied with Myers Briggs about yourself?
So I'm thinking about why did I have to do that? So I was part of a internship program called the Emma Bowen Foundation, where they partner minority students with a media company for 4 years. It's part scholarship, part intern work study, and I think as part of like our summer training, they had every student do the Myers Briggs, and that's where I first learned I was an ENFJ, extroverted, intuitive, feeling, judgmental. Um, so wait, what was the question again? Was the question
What did
why?
you like when you did it?
What did
Like,
I
what?
learn?
Yeah, or are there other tools today, if that's fresher, right, that you leverage to try to understand yourself?
So I think that that was one of the first times that I could understand why I do certain things, right? Or it helped me understand like what type of I think I did it in the context of leadership, right? Or what type like how can you like we all it made me understand that we all have different personality types, and in order to get what you want or in order to work with other people, you have to understand how they also are, and then you have to understand how you guys can work together to make things happen. And then it also, I think, for me, made me realize like you have something that makes you unique, and lean into that. And when they say like who are famous ENFJs, I'm googling it right now, right? It made me look at the type of person. So Oprah Winfrey is a famous ENFJ. Martin Luther King, Barack Obama, um, Maya Angelou, Michael Jordan, right? I'm like, oh, these are all like types of people that I can not saying I see myself in, but like a Oprah, she's a big media personality. A Barack, I feel like he's a charismatic leader who also tries to affect change. Maya Angelou, she's a creative, but she's also like very curious about the world. So it made me find a group of people that were like me in a way. Like everyone wants to feel part of the community. So that was the thing that I think really helped me understand where do I thrive. I think that's a big thing that anybody who's listening in, you need to kind of like pay attention to the spaces that you thrive in, the spaces that you don't thrive in. What are the skill sets that make you unique? And doing that type of assessment made me see that it's okay. Like there's a place for me. There's a place for all of us, but there's a place especially for me. Like, I thrive in places where I can give feedback or places where I have some creative freedom, but I'm also a little bit structured because that's where the judgmental part comes in where I'm like, listen, you don't got a plan, but that type of thing. But I like to do a plan based on my feelings, not always on facts. So things like that. It also helps you feel like not only your strengths, but it also helps you find your weaknesses and realizing that, okay, and I'll go back to the idea of like, I like to make a plan, but sometimes it's based on feelings and not facts, right? Where someone who is, I think it's is it N or S? I think it's you're either intuitive or I forgot what the other part is, but like, yeah. So someone who's intuitive will just kind of be like, I feel it. And I realized like my sister, she's the exact opposite. And she hates when I try to say that we should do something because I have a feeling. And she's just like, Raina, what do you mean? I'm like, trust me. Like my intuition never lies. And she's just like, no, that's not what the weather app says it's gonna rain. I'm like, no, I don't smell rain. I don't smell rain. But it's just one of those things of like, you just start to realize like knowing yourself is never a bad thing. And the validation of like there are other people who have these type of personality quirks, or like this is where they can show up best, was something I needed, especially as like a young, 20 something, just trying to figure out and navigate life. Knowing who you are will help you as you navigate life. And I think a lot of us sometimes are scared to take those tests because we're not sure about what it will uncover. But I think it's just validation of what you already know. But you kind of, it's kind of good to see it on paper.
Yeah, no, my mom, who was on my first episode of this, she's an executive coach. So over the years, I have had to do a number of different assessments,
Mm-hmm.
which are really helpful. But I guess I want to get to the other side of them. Like, what about when you realize that there are either misalignments or
Mm.
misunderstandings? Like, what happens when people don't get you? Like, what do you do?
With the actual assessments, I kind of see it as like,
No, just in general. Like, so you're like,
oh,
go find your strengths. We're all unique, like find community. But we all live in the real world, right? And there are times when people are not going to be supportive or they're not going to be understanding. Like, how do you grapple with that, with people who might be detractors?
mm. That's a hard one because I think it depends on who it is. I think it depends on like what circle they come from. So for example, I call them like dream killers in my, in the rhetoric of dreams and drive. Sometimes the people closest to you can be dream killers unintentionally. And I'll say that as a parent. So now that I have a son, I realize that I may be well intentioned, but I may actually be doing more harm than good. So um we had this fight during Halloween with my son. When we were going to medieval times for a birthday the week prior to Halloween. So I said whatever costume they get for medieval times, that'll be their Halloween costume. I bought him two options. I bought him accidentally. I typed in like gladiator instead of knight, so he had a Roman gladiator costume. Then I'm like, oh no, that's not like medieval. That's not the wrong time period. So then I got him like a medieval knight costume. But I personally love the Roman gladiator. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Like I could just see him. Like this would be so cool. But he loved the knight, right? And I was trying to give him logic. Like I was like, this is like you got green shoes that will match this. Like you should go with the gladiator. And he's just like, no, I don't want it. And he's 5, right? But he was sure of himself. When I tell you, I started putting on the Roman gladiator costume on him, thinking that he'll just forget about it. And when he looked in the mirror, he had a full down meltdown. And I had to be like, Raina, why are you so tied to this Roman gladiator? And I just really wanted him to see him in it. And it made me think, like, what about when people did that to you? How did you feel? And I was a very strong willed kid. And so I remember having those like power struggles and just feeling like I want to be me. Why won't they let me be me? And I had to really take a step back and be like, girl, just it's not your like you gave him an option and he chose. So let him wear the night costume. And I think for me, when I think about how that relates to me, it's so important to like be okay with people not being okay with you. And I like that Axel didn't just say, okay, mom, right? He stood up for himself. And there have been a lot of times in my own life where I've had to like stand up for what I know to be true to me. And even in the workplace sometimes like we all have personality quirks and like I've been realizing lately that not everyone's going to understand you. Like we all come from different backgrounds, different experiences. I'm Jamaican American, other people might be from other, cultures. And just because someone may like make a remark that will make you feel like the other, it's okay to be the other. Like it's okay. It's okay to be like I call myself quirky. Like I have a lot of quirks that people might say I'm weird and I'm okay with being weird, but I also think that I had parents who made supported that and where my dad always used to tell me like just be you. Why you want to be like somebody else, right? And I think that having that foundation is so important. Just being able to advocate for what you know to be true about yourself and then just being okay with being you. Because when you look about it, like when you think about it, I should say, if Oprah tried to be somebody else, would she ever be Oprah? Right? Or maybe I don't know. I'm not her. Maybe she was trying to be somebody else and it worked out. Who knows? But I think that it's just important to lean into you because the things that make you unique, your gifts, your skill sets, your unique point of view matter. And I think some people have a hard time being okay with that stuff mattering.
Yeah, and it can take time to think about the different pieces of you, right? Depending on the setting, whether it's work, whether it's family, whether it's other parts of your life, and having those opportunities like Axel to look in a mirror and say, like, when do I feel good?
Yeah. I'm like,
And
I'll just return to Amazon. It's fine. It
maybe
hurt
next
my
year,
heart.
maybe
I
you'll be
really
the
wanted a
gladiator.
picture of him in his gladiator costume.
Well, so you've talked about Axel, you've talked about work. Like the podcast is not the only thing you do. So
Hmm.
I had a coach who talked about it in terms of portfolio life, and my stepmom always says, like, forget balance, just try happiness. So, how would you describe your portfolio life these days?
So I would say if there was a portfolio, it would be called on the top of it, or the front of it. It would say Storyteller, right? And the way that when you open it up, there'd be different pages. So you'd have the podcast, you'd have photographer, because I think I often forget that like photo was one of my first loves. Like I used to dress my friends up and we do little model sessions. I think it's actually an interest of mine that, to be frank, I think I'm scared to go really hard on it. And I don't know why, but I think it would bring me so much joy. Like in another life, I would be a full time like fashion editorial photographer. I love photography. I would say I'm also a chef because I like to make things from scratch. And that can be like, and I'm not just saying food, if that makes any sense, right? I think I'm a chef in a lot of ways, but I've always kind of been drawn to like the kitchen. I like cooking, not baking. Baking, no, not so much, but I like the art of cooking because I think you can have more experimentation. Baking, you need to kind of be more scientific. There's like, you can't put too much flour in a cake, it's gonna mess it up, right? But if I put too much flour in a gravy, I can like add something else to kind of balance it out. So, I'm a chef in many ways. When it comes to marketing, I would say I'm a marketer, and that's probably how like my professional career has come to life. So marketer in the nonprofit space, marketer in the e-commerce marketing space, and now I'm at a big media company in our brand partnership space, and just seeing how storytelling comes to life through partnerships has been really cool. Um, and behind that, I think behind all the storytelling, I also have a business mindset where I like making money. As a kid, I was like, I had my own little bake sale. I had my own little lemonade stand. I always had little side hustles. So I like figuring out how revenue can be made. And I think that can kind of be attached to all of the different pages. Like, you have a little tab at the bottom that will say, increase sales by this much, or like figure out how to make money in some way. So I like money, but I also am a storyteller. And I think I'm also a networker, connection builder, because through all my life, I would say that relationships and building connections has also been the way by which I'm able to continue being a storyteller, a way by which I'm able to understand business and have that strategic mindset as well. Um, yeah, I think like that's the biggest way that I would describe it. And I also would say like parent has been a big page that I have to add to my portfolio now, because I think it really impacts how I see the world and how I show up in the world. Now that I have like two sons, Axel and Diesel, a lot of my decisions, most of my decisions are through the lens of being a parent now. I'm happy that I got to live a life before being a parent. I was just talking about this with my cousin earlier. Like, oh my God, what did we do? What did we do with our lives when we didn't have kids? We had so much more time. But now that I do have kids, I think it's just good to kind of add that. And I think it's important, especially as a Black woman, as a Black mother, to proudly put that in my title, because I think motherhood can be taxed in a way. And I think as a Black woman, there's so much that, we're told, like, you should just be grateful that you have a job, or you should just be grateful that you get this opportunity. But I'm like, I'm a mother first, and I am proud to want to spend time to invest in how my children grow up. So there are certain things that I'll need flexibility for. But I think sometimes like mothers are scared to like say that because we still need a job, right? But we don't want to say, hey, I need to leave early because I need to take my son to the doctor. But I think if we start normalizing that motherhood is a title that is also as important, then we'll also start getting more. People have to pay attention to it if people are calling it out for them.
You calling it out, making people aware, normalizing things. I mean, I think that's what the best of storytelling does, right?
Yeah.
Micro level, macro level. But I want to get back to this photographer part.
Yeah.
What's the holdup for that? Like
So
where
let
are
me
you?
tell you, and like before like middle school, like my it's funny because it goes back to my parents. It's so interesting. My parents are like the technology people. Like they always had a camera, they always had a video camera. My dad was always like buying somebody's bootleg something and bringing it home. So I always was the kid who had the camera. So I was the I would say I was the archivist. Is that how you say the word? Archivist? Archivist? Whatever.
Archivist,
I was a
whatever.
librarian. I took pictures of everything. So anybody to this day, they'll say, Raina, do you have that fourth grade picture from the birthday party that we went to? And I can go into my little records and be like, here it is, give it back to me. So I just love documenting memories. I think that that would probably be another page in my portfolio. Is I'm very good at documenting memories, which is probably why I'm so curious in the podcast, because I think there's stuff that you probably don't remember that we need to talk about so that you can have it forever now. Um, I used to have my best friend who lived next door. She would come over, I would dress her up, and then I would like take her pictures. My dad always had me, I always had like the latest digital camera in high school. They knew I had the little wristlet digital camera that would hang off my wrist. I used to walk around with the little camera documenting everything. In college at Princeton, well, actually, no, in high school, I did black and white photography. So I did it in the dark room. In Princeton, I did it. Then that's when like the world was kind of shifting to more video, but I still loved photography, but I like doing faces. So I think I'm a great portrait photographer where I just like candid, no studio light, like not like very natural light faces. Like I just like documenting something about the face was so fascinating to me. I did a whole I think my like senior project or whatever my final photography project at Princeton was like this whole like thing of just faces, and it was in the art gallery for a while. I think what got me like I don't know why I don't do more of it. I don't know. I really don't know, Ara. Like, I just really, I don't know. And you know what? It's funny because it's like I'm always like I have so many screenshots. I have so many inspirations. I interview photographers on the show. I have so many photographer friends. My partner, he's a photographer. Like, and I feel like I poured into other people's photography dreams. But I think like if I was to like stop what I'm doing and like if I had another gig, I could be a photographer, but it would be very niche. Like I don't like the stylized. Like I'm more like a street photographer, which is also interesting. I feel like I'm going all over the place.
This is great.
Another big one of my big creative interests to this day, Humans of New York. When Humans of New York first came out, I felt like Brandon Stanton was one of the first people I feel like on the internet who combined photography with storytelling. And I thought to myself, like, oh, that should have been me. Just going around taking street art, very street style esque photos and then putting a story with it. I wish I could have his job. And he was one of like my favorite content creators that I got his books. I'm like, oh, I could do this. I could do this. But then I just kind of thought that it's already done. What could be the unique spin on it? But that was another early inspiration for Dreams and Drive as well. The whole idea of just seeing where the conversation goes and following it.
Well, as someone who also spent some time in that Princeton University darkroom, I would say you are a photographer. You are
Yeah. I
creating.
have so much stuff that I'm like, maybe I should just post it on Instagram one day and just see what happens.
When you do, let me know because I'll be there to like it. All right. I will let you off the hook, but when you decide, let me
No,
know.
and it's like I think there's just so many different paths I could take. Like, do I want to be like, how can I? And I think in my head, it's like, how, would I make money off of just being a street style photographer? Like in my head, I should go out to Times Square during lunchtime and just like sit around and just document or take pictures. But I just keep thinking, like, would anyone think it's cool or is it just me? I don't know.
But I mean, we'll talk revenue. I mean, everybody is talking on these things called podcasts, right? And
Yeah.
you figured out a way to find that top
Yeah,
line,
that is
right?
true. I
So,
think that's really like, and I think what's missing in my life, I don't know if we get to this, but the thing that I feel like is missing is a true creative outlet. And I miss like being able to go deep on something. Not saying that podcasting, it doesn't excite me as much, but I kind of feel like I've gotten the hang of it. And because I haven't like elevated production, I don't have a huge team. I haven't taken it to the level where I could go deep on figuring out how to get it to that level. But I do miss just like having some creative thing. And I say that because, a lot of artists have died lately. I even think about like when my dad died, everyone could say like he was really good at this, or he really loved to tinker with things and make things. And I sometimes wonder, this might be very morbid, like what will people say about me like when I die? Like, I don't know. When D'Angelo, the artist, passed, when people said like he was a true savant when it came to um music and instruments, and he just took so much time and just had this like passion for it. It took years to make a piece of work. I sometimes wonder if I'm not going as deep as I need to, but I feel like I'm just so busy I don't have time to go deep. But then I say, maybe I'm not going deep because I'm scared to go deep.
because what happens if you go deep?
Then I'll be going down a different path. If I really said, hey, I just want to take pictures of people's faces, like to me, that would be, I could just picture it now, like a book of just people's faces. And there's so many stories that you can tell from just a face, like a baby's face. I love taking pictures of like my son when he was little. Like just, yeah. I'm gonna text you some photos I have on my phone after this. And like there's a very distinct look that you'll see. And it's just one of those things that I don't know. I also don't have, I mean, like I could borrow my partner's camera, but I've just been using my iPhone. But I know how to use a camera. I don't know. This is a therapy session.
I'm just following your lead. You're in the
Yeah.
driver's seat of this photography thing.
I know. It definitely is something that I think would be exciting, but I think also I don't want to then have to get into the technicality of the technical side of photography because it can be very technical too. It's like I just want to like take pictures of people's faces. But wait, if I'm going to take this seriously, I probably should learn like I should go deeper with my study of the camera. I don't know.
Oh, that's that tinkerer's daughter
Yeah.
coming out. Well,
Yeah.
I think, it's an interesting thing about, how far do you go down in something, like what's an acceptable level. And as someone who does a lot of different creative things, I very much understand. And we're just having a little fun, but
Yeah.
it is one of these also, like, when do you get to say that you are a photographer? Like you are actively making images with a camera. Those are,
Yeah, I would say like, and I don't like to put the word amateur in front of things. I remember one of my coaches told me again, like, never call yourself an amateur anything. You are just it. And that's something if I was to put that title in, I would never put amateur in front of it because I think I have a lot of experience. It might not be the same type of experience as a very well known like photographer, someone who's been doing it for decades longer than I've been alive, but I'm still a photographer, right?
yeah. And, you're also an entrepreneur because one of the things that I knew this about you, but I'm getting more of a sense as we keep talking is this idea of building seems to be really important to you. You said you were a chef, right? This idea of like chef, not
Yeah.
baker, like there's not a specific recipe in mind, but there are ingredients that you have in this beautiful outcome. And so you've got a business, you've got a brand, you've built community to help others do the same. What are some of the hard lessons that you've learned in the process?
It's funny because I like to give examples that make it easier for people to understand. So I'm now a PTO mom. I joined the PTO at my son's school, and the leader of the PTO, this is where my judgmental side comes in. The first PTO meeting, I felt so disjointed. Like I felt like, what's going on here? Like there's just a lot going on. The leader, she was very well intentioned. You could tell she had passion, but I don't think she had experience with like putting together a team and figuring out how to take the passion and connecting it to the results that she wanted. Right. So after the call, I just did a simple, hey, I took some notes. I'm going to send you the notes. I didn't want to come off as I'm trying to take the PTO from her. Right. But I realized one of the biggest things for people is the what is the goal, right? Like defining the goal. Like what is the thing that you're really trying to achieve? And just organizing it. Like not everything has to be figured out, but I think just having a guide for how you want to figure it out is good. And that's even my approach to the podcast. I never like write down every single question, but I normally have like a general arc, right? To I know at this point by here I should be at this point. Now we need to come down. Now we have to come full circle around. Like that's I kind of see it visually. So I think sometimes when you're building anything, you kind of have to have an understanding of what it is that you're trying to build. And I do think that like not everyone's going to be super organized, and I think sometimes being too organized can be bad, but you kind of have to have some general like what is it that you're trying to build? When do you need to build it by? I think they call it like SMART goals, right? It doesn't hurt to just have a simple plan. I don't want to like make it overcomplicated because that can be scary for some people. But just by me giving her my notes and the way I organize it, because I think sometimes the way my brain processes information is I need buckets to put things into, right? Like it all goes into my head and then I shoot it out in different buckets. I was just able to give her a simple framework for, hey, maybe this is how we can set up future PTO meetings, and this will be helpful to you in this way. And she was so happy. She didn't think that I was trying to take over. She was just like, oh, wow, Raina, like I had never thought about like I need to organize my intentions for the group. And just that simple thing of just figuring out, hey, what's my deadline here? What are my goals? Like, what's the framework? I think for the next PTO meeting, she's going to feel a lot confident as the leader and just have a little bit more direction about where she's going. Of course, you can kind of like, the biggest things though that I realized with dream driving, and I've interviewed over 400 people on the show, is those tactical things can be figured out. The hardest thing about all of this is the intangible things. The biggest challenges most people face, and we just talked about it with my whole photography thing that I can't get over. What are we telling ourselves? What are the stories we're telling ourselves? What are the dream killers that we're planting in our own minds? Fear, doubt. Those are the biggest themes are most people have to get over the fear and the doubt in order to go anywhere. Um and it's hard for a lot of us, and it's not something that like is ever gone, right? It's like just a new time. Okay, you got through it for a few months. Oh, but now it's back. How do you fight through it? Or how do you build the confidence to be able to now stand up for yourself? Like Axel telling me, hey, no, I don't want to wear this gladiator costume. I want to wear the knight costume. So confidence building, fear, like working on yourself basically is the biggest hurdle, because if you're not your best self, you really can't show up in the best way. Like you can fight it for a long time, but after a while, people who are putting on a show, it comes to light when you just can't, like you can't, when it rains, it's gonna rain. It doesn't rain forever, but when it rains again, are you ready to do you have your umbrella ready?
I'm curious if this holds true for you, but for a lot of entrepreneurs who like to move fast, move thoughtfully, sometimes the wins kind of come and then there's like the next thing, right? And I'm wondering, are there any big wins that maybe you've either forgotten to celebrate or you haven't celebrated in a long time that you want to celebrate now?
Hmm. I kind of feel like I haven't had a big win in a while, and I say that because I'll say that in the relation of the podcast. So, like, I work with a podcast agency, so I've been getting consistent revenue. But personally, I feel like the show has kind of flatlined, and I feel like I need something to get it to the next level. So I've kind of feel like I've been on autopilot for a long time, and I wish I had something to celebrate, but I have to remind myself like there's seasons. I told myself like there's this season for everything. Maybe this season of life that I'm in right now, like your dad just died. Like it's only been a year. Like you probably couldn't handle if there was something big happening right now. Like let yourself just have this season of figuring it out, of grieving, of it not being as busy as you want. But then when I think about it, if I take like, take a step back, I'm like, wait, you've been doing this for 10 years. There's two ways you could think about that. Either you haven't accomplished everything that you wanted or you're not as big, or wow, you have done so much. Like when you're in it, you sometimes don't understand how big that is. 10 years of podcast. Well, I just launched the 439th episode last week or 2 weeks ago. That's a lot. When you do the math, that and I've edited it all myself. Not saying that's good. I probably that's a little crazy. I should have had a team, but like, I've been doing so much. So sometimes I need to just step back and be like, wait, 10 years. You did this. You got 2 kids. You moved. You did like, like y- you're still here. Like you're still here. You're still putting things in motion. It might not be at the scale that you think it needs to be, but it's still like something that is worth you celebrating. Like 10 years of a podcast is huge. I think I'm trying to figure out like what am I going to do, like whether it's big, whether it's small, I don't know yet, but I'm just even if I don't do anything big, I think for myself just saying like go girl, you did that is very important.
You did do that and you're doing it. And I
Yeah,
am here to say,
thank you. Like it's celebration worthy. Like it is a feat. And when I first launched it, I remember like the first episode and just not even being able to imagine all the things I've been able to do because I started that. And I was telling someone the other day, like, my podcast has been the gift that has showed up for me in the most. I don't know. I'm like, whoever's controlling the universe, when they wrote my character, they made this podcast show up for me in a lot of ways that I didn't think it would it would ever like make sense, but it all makes sense.
yeah, it does. And I'm really excited. There is no pressure here because we have already celebrated the fact, but
Mm.
if you decide to do something big or small, I will be there cheering you
I know
on.
I keep telling myself like what you have over 400 guests that you could have on the show. Like you could just do I don't even need to invite other people. I could just invite all the New York City, New York, or whoever. Like maybe they want to come here from other places and just do like a not gala or like dinner. I don't know, but that's something where I'm like my guest community themselves, you guys are all popping in so many different ways. And I even say to myself, you've had people on the show who before they were even like big are now doing certain things. 10 years is a long time. So people who were on the show back in like 2018, 2016 even, and now they're doing so many different things. I sometimes feel a little underrated, but then I have to ask myself, what are you really looking for? And that's a big thing that I've been trying to like dive into like in therapy and stuff is like this need for like what am I truly chasing? And I think it's twofold. I think that you can like I love storytelling. I love like telling people stories, but I think there is a part of me who also likes to get a pat on the back from outside people and get that validation. And I think as like a woman sometimes, as a black woman, we're sometimes told like stay in your place, right? but why not? Like, I'm pretty sure Beyonce gets a little high from being on stage, and it's okay. So I think that's something that I'm trying to be okay with is like, Raina, you like to the spotlight a little bit, and that's okay. I think that's the first time I've said that out loud. That, you know, it's kind of like we're all chasing some kind of dopamine hit in some way, and I think it's okay as long as you're not abusing it. And as long as you can function, that's not the only way you can function is like looking for that validation or that external validation, I should say.
Yeah, the idea of the chase or, like, even knowing, like, what kind of hunt are you on, like, and where you know when you catch it, right? Like, that's years long work sometimes,
Yeah.
but saying things out loud is really important. Have you read, Tony at Random?
No.
So it's about Toni Morrison's time as an editor at Random House.
Oh, is it it's a biography?
Yeah, I guess you could call it that. Yes, it's not from her point of view,
Okay.
but what you were talking about, it was just interesting because thinking about her as a writer is one thing, but thinking about her as an editor and realizing, one, just learning how hard she had to work to get different people's stories out there and like what it was like
Mm,
to also be a writer who was ascendant at the same time, and sort of how that sometimes influenced in a good way her ability to help other writers come along, but also just what the I guess I've always sort of just known her as capital T, right?
yeah.
Toni Morrison, but not thinking about all of the work that goes into getting books out there that aren't necessarily what the mainstream is ready for. And so when I hear you talking about your Dreams and Drive community, one of the things I think about is the gift that you gave me when you had me on as a guest, right? Like the ability to share one story and or to hear the questions that somebody else who is not in your life all the
Mm,
time, right? The things that other people are curious about is sometimes a gift in and of itself, right? Because it gives us a sense of like, oh, like if I took photographs, people might really want to know what my perspective is. Or, so I think that whatever next chapter comes, I think that you have already given such a gift for people. And some of the reasons why people are where they are is because they happen to, drop in and get to chat
and
with you.
everyone's stories matter. And I think when I think about my why, I think, growing up as a kid, like I was very like it's funny because although I'm an extrovert, I think I also thrive in introverted settings as well. So I may show up as an extrovert, but like honestly I'm an introvert because I'm always like looking in and reflecting and stuff like that. And I feel like some people don't realize how powerful their unique lived experience is, and I think that's one of the things I like about the show is being able to just like you said, have a conversation. And at the end I'll have most times people will say, wow, I've never really realized or I've never talked about that in this way, or it's been a long time since I've even thought about that. And for me, I'm like, wait, you're not thinking about your childhood every day? They're like, no. I'm like, wait, really? It's just, or you're not like putting the dots. And I think that's why it's so important. I think people do need to take some time to just like talk about how they got to where they are and reflect on things. But you might need someone to guide you through that because we all have blind spots. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, this is the part of the conversation where we do what I call the lightning round.
Okay. I love it. I love a
I don't,
lightning round.
I don't have any sound effects, but
Okay. Boom,
um,
boom.
boom. But this is where I get some quick hit answers from my guests. So the
Okay.
first thing I want to ask about are preoccupations. So I teach a storytelling in public workshop, and one of the exercises that we do is something that I borrowed from a creative writing class at Princeton, actually. And it's basically how do you identify those things that we come back to over and over again? Whether it's stories we tell ourselves, stories we tell others, if we are in the business of storytelling, stories we create for others to consume. Preoccupations can sometimes start with phrases like I love, I hate, I wish I had, I hope I never, but they don't have to. And so some of mine include organized animal crime networks. Um, more to come on that. Um, Ancestors and work life integration. Although you've reminded me, childhood is obviously something I'm super preoccupied about. But With those as examples, what is one of your preoccupations?
The first thing that came to mind is I wonder why. And it goes back to I'm always wondering why in a lot of ways, right? Like, I think when I look at people, let's say I see someone walking or the way someone responds to something, I'll be like, I wonder why. And that normally goes back to who are they as a child? Like, even one of my bosses one time, I just said to him, what did your dad do when you were growing up, right? And I say that because I don't know if I think I'm a therapist or I could solve the world, but his answer though made me realize that informed a lot of the way he shows up, because he said, like, his father was disabled and didn't really get to work as much, right? And so when he became older, and he's like, I never want to be like that, I never want to let anything stop me, so he's just very, very driven. And it made me think, I wonder why. And here's the thing, I think you then can find connection between people, because like my mother was disabled very early on in her life, and she didn't get to finish nursing school. She became a stay-at-home mom. And when I look at her, I always wonder, like, I'm like, I wonder why she never finished. I've never asked her though. I think it's part of me just trying, like, I don't want to bring up bad memories, but it's something I do want to ask her. And I think now as a mother, I probably would understand her answer more. She had two young kids. She probably just thought it would be better to focus on us versus her own dreams. But I think that also has informed the way I show up, is like, I don't ever want to, like, there's always possibility. I think we talked about this, uh the idea of possibility. That's probably a preoccupation of mine. Is I really think that you could either try to figure things out or figure out how you can get as close as possible to whatever it is that you're trying to do within reason. Um, and the wonder why, though, is the preoccupation with curiosity. I'm always like, what happened to you? I think that's a book. What happened to you? Or something like that. Like, something happened that informed your next step. You might not realize it, but something happened. And I like figuring out what was it, or asking the question, what was that?
You are on the case. I love that. All right. So from preoccupations, we now go to superpowers. Um, we've been talking about things that make people unique, and that's one of the things I love about this podcast is I get to learn that. So, what's one of your superpowers?
I think I have. I think I'm psychic. I'm just no. I do think I have like a whoever wrote my character in this thing called life, right, gave me some extra powers. I definitely feel like I have an intuition that normally guides me where it needs to be guided. Um, I feel like I'm a very feeling based person, and I pick up on vibes, and I'm not afraid to like ride the wave of the vibe to get what I need to get or to figure out what I need to get. But sometimes it can be a little like, it can be, I think sometimes it can be like a superpower and not, because I think sometimes I can get caught up and not realize it's not always like that. Like, everything's okay. I think sometimes it can put me on alert. I'm very like sensitive of like little things around me. Wait, your left eye is twitching. Are you okay? Like, it can be off putting to some people if if I'm constantly trying to like check the situation or check the feeling of a situation. So that goes back to like what happened to me. Why am I so sensitive to people's feelings and all this other stuff? So um, I think another superpower of mine is I'm a great question at answer, and I'm very like resourceful. Like, I like to figure things out. I kind of see like life is a thing to be figured out, but at the same time, life is something to be experienced. Um, I think I'm thoughtful, and I say that because I like to think one step ahead sometimes. So, like, if I know that someone is allergic to dairy, if I'm doing a dinner, I'm not gonna have mac and cheese unless I have, I'll try to like be thoughtful with people. Yeah, I think I'm cool. I think that's a superpower. I think I'm not afraid to say that I don't know. And I think that's something some people try to fake the funk, but I'm okay with just being like, I just don't feel it today.
So that brings me to an ask. Um, I'm Here Too is about community, bringing people together, and I hope they are learning and sharing
Hmm.
and inspired. But in addition to what you have already given us during this conversation, you are otherwise very generous with your
Mm.
time and your resources. And so I want to ask, is there something the audience can do for you?
Listen to my podcast. I think that, for me, that's a hard one. And I think that goes back to like, I think sometimes it's hard to ask for, I don't know if it's help. I don't know what it would be. And I don't want to be philosophical and make it like, look inwards, be afraid, don't be afraid to ask the question. But maybe it is like, don't be afraid to take some more time to like discover who you are and to be okay with being quirky, to be okay with being whatever that is. I think, and if you think about the title of this podcast, I am here too. Like, I have an affirmation with my son where it's called I am me. Like, I am me. And I make him say that because you take up space no matter what. Like, you can't become invisible. So be all right with that. Invest in your taking up space, however that comes to life for you. I think that's one of the most important things. If you're listening to this, if you're inspired in some way, don't be afraid to show the world how you take up space. And then don't be afraid to take care of yourself too while you're taking up space. Because if you want to be here for a while, you got to do that. But yeah, listen to the podcast. I think that would be the biggest thing. Or shoot me a note. I think I like hearing stories of how stories impact people or how hearing someone else's story impacts people. I think it just gives confirmation as to why this is important. And we sometimes need that pick me up. This has been a rough year for me. So if you felt connected in some way, please send a note. I think that would bring me joy.
How can they find you to send you a note?
So I am online across social media at Dreams and Drive. My personal one is Rain Shine Love. I should change it, but I'm like, you know what? That's a monument. That's the librarian in me. That was like an old thing I used to do in high school. I'd say there's three things in life: rain, sunshine, and love. But because I was cool, I did love LUV. So Rain Shine Love is where you can find me personally. Um, and then dreamsanddrive.com, the podcast can be listened to anywhere you hear Ara's podcast. You can definitely listen to mine. And then I also have a Substack, which I want to get back on, dreamsanddrive.substack.com.
Love it. So you've all heard it. You can find Raina in a number of ways. Find her, listen to her, keep her on the journey. All right, last question in the lightning round. A
Okay.
read, a listen, a watch. There is so much content and definitely not enough time for me. But what is something that you are reading, listening to, or watching, or all three, or two that others might enjoy?
So I actually just took my son to the library for the first time in a long time. And I was a library kid, but it's just like I have no time. So we went to the library last week and I'm like, I'm gonna do something for mom too. So I went downstairs into the adult section. I got a book, American Marriage. I think it's by Tayeri. Let me figure it out. Yeah, American Marriage. I feel like I don't read a lot of fiction now, and I'm really into the nonfiction. So I was trying to get back into fiction. So I'm reading that. I'm enjoying it, although I feel like I have to get back to the swing of fiction. So I'm like, okay, where's this going? What is, but I have to just let myself go into that. And then what am I watching? It was a read. What was
A
the other one?
listen and a watch.
Okay, so what am I am watching Abbott Elementary. So I have never gotten into Abbott. I'm very much a drama, crime, like historical war person. I like watching those type of stuff.
Okay.
Romances that are very not fun and very sad. But something I think over the past few weeks, I'm like, you need some just joy in your life. So Abbott Elementary, I'm now in season 3. So I'm like, this is very I love it. It's just so like lighthearted, so funny. And, I've been following Quinta's journey and just so amazed to see how she went from like BuzzFeed and now she's just this big time star, and just seeing all like the actors and actresses in that, I really love it. And then a listen, um I really have been listening to a lot of like D'Angelo. I think because he passed, I just have like, let me listen to his body of work. I love like a Daniel Caesar to his old work. I've been following like I've been listening to a lot of like um slower soul R&B stuff. I even had Justin Bieber's album. He has some good ones. His song, there's a song called Devotion. I just love it. Like the hymns and like things that remind me of like gospel-esque type stuff has really been good for my soul now.
Well, I love all of those
Mm.
selections, so thank you for sharing them. And Raina, thank you for coming on this podcast and for doing your podcast and just being out there in the world. I really enjoyed catching up.
Thank you, Ara. This has just been so good for me. I think I have always try like, it's okay to share my story too, and I think that's the part that I'm like, you don't always have to ask all the questions. You can answer some as well. So this has been a very perfect opportunity for me to do that, and I hope that listeners are intrigued and got something from it. I think it's the uncovering of things that you never got to talk about. Like now I'm gonna go sit and really be like, why have I not done this photography thing a little bit more? And I have like kids, I could just pimp them out, like, you're cute. Let me take some pictures. I'm just playing.
Well, we will follow that journey wherever you send us, and it will be a joy and a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that's all for this episode of I'm Here Too. Thank you all so much for joining us. I hope that you enjoyed our conversation. Please remember to subscribe so that you don't miss the next conversation. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.